Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. My name is Al Segalla. I'm president of the Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and I'll be your moderator for this session. These interviews are very fascinating and helpful for people that care about what's happening in the community, because we always have informed, intelligent people, and most of them are better looking than I am. But regardless of whether they're good looking or not, you're going to come away rewarded with more knowledge about what's happening in our community. This session is no exception. We have Marc Lutz, who's the editor of the Calaveras Enterprise, a remarkable man. He runs while I walk. And Marc, I want to thank you for coming. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Al. Nice to be here. I have been in the news business for nearly 20 years. Started out as a cartoonist and humor columnist, freelance for the Stockton Record. Was interested in newspapers and the business ever since I was a child, and my grandmother would read me the comics, and then I got to the point where I could read them to her, and was fascinated with it. And that same paper was the Record where I got my start. From there, spent a lot of years just studying and drawing, and moved up and got a job with the Lodi News Sentinel and several business journals throughout California. And I live in Lodi, so I'm a little bit out of county, but it's always a beautiful drive, and look forward to it each time. And I live with 4 cats, and they seem to run things, and just have like you said, I run. I've done several marathons, and leave it to a runner to always let you know that that's what they do. Been a little bit of a challenge here this year, but keep at it. And outside of that, draw and play guitar and do a little bit of writing on the side. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's wonderful. Actually, you could probably write a book about yourself and for kids to read, and because you can act like the role model of maybe something they may want to do. And
I suppose that's true.
It's not every day that you get people that are really positive and successful in this world, and it is these people that actually bring about a better tomorrow. It's not the other people.
I've always said if there's something that I want to know, I will dig into it, and I will learn everything that I can, so that I can know as much about it as possible, and make myself a better person, and be able to inform those around me.
One of the things, there's several things we'd like to discuss. One of the ones is the role of the newspaper, and of course the role of the newspaper would be all newspapers, but the role of the enterprise would be what would be most fascinating, because you're unique in several ways. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it is. It's a very unique paper. I mean, there really aren't a whole lot of community newspapers left these days, and those that are run by very dedicated staff, and they keep at it. I know of several small papers that some of them are run by 2 or 3 people just to keep that paper going. I think Trinity is one of them up north, and we've got a small crew, but we keep going, and really dedicated to Calaveras County. Some things happen outside of the county that will reach out, but mostly we try to focus on those things that happen here. I mean, when you look at the national level, you've got stories that are going to be more political, things that affect the nation as a whole, larger weather stories, things of that nature. And here it's going to be more of a community interest, trying to focus on the good things that happen. And it's not always possible. There are bad things that happen in every town, and you know, we have to look at those as well, because people want to know these things. And just keeping the readers informed and engaged. And I think that's one of the most important roles of the community paper is keeping readers engaged, keeping readers talking with one another, talking to us, this is what we would like to see, or this is happening. We don't always know when things are going on unless someone tells us. You know?
Right.
So.
Newspapers are going through a rough time right now. And so the state of the newspaper is somewhat in question as to whether newspapers can survive. And what are the factors contributing to the problems, and what are some possible solutions?
There's quite a lot, and it's been on the decline for a number of years. Newspapers have always gone through an evolution. If you look at any newspaper from the mid-1900s, early 1900s, mid-1900s, you read the language and you can really see the bias of a reporter.
Right.
And they use very colorful language.
Or the editor.
Or the editor. Or the editor. And it wasn't opinion that was kept to an opinion page, an editorial page.
Right.
And so the standard of ethics that have been developed for newspapers have kind of grown over the years, and it's trying to look at every angle of a story and getting all the facts involved, and writing a complete story as much as possible. And there was a time when newspapers were a great advertising source, one of the only daily advertising sources for small businesses, and that's what we had, community mom and pops.
Right.
And so that's how they got the word out, beyond just word of mouth. And that drove the newspaper industry for a lot of years. And you had the community involvement, and as it grew, you got to the point where all of a sudden you had the advent of the internet.
Right.
And that started to take advertising away. But that, to be fair, is not always the big factor in the decline of newspapers. One of the things is that evolution of the internet goes on, and it's more readable, and you have basically a built-in audience as children are born into a society where you've got this technological advancement.
They come wired.
Yeah, they come wired, and that's how they get their information. That's how a lot of learning is. Look how it is right now with schools. How long kids have had to do virtual learning. So there's all sorts of things that take place in that online world. And that's where reading the newspaper has gone.
Now, the Enterprise is online too.
Yes.
You have an online edition. And now, how does that compare to the paper edition?
Well, we've basically got the three products. We have the paper,
right,
which is you can get on the newsstands, or it's mailed, or you can get it at the office. Then there's the website, and then there's the e-edition. Now, the e-edition is just a PDF or digital version of the newspaper. And sometimes that causes a little bit of confusion because you get that PDF from the website.
Yeah.
So people think that if they have a subscription to the digital version, that means they have a subscription to the online site, the website. But those are two different subscriptions. And now you can have a subscription to all three, which is great, but you're really getting the same thing 3 times there. The benefit of the hard copy, the newspaper, is you can do the puzzles by hand and
right,
things like that. And you can do that with a PDF reader that allows you to write in it if you have that. It gets a little bit confusing. But, as the internet has advanced, and people have found that they can now advertise on their own Facebook page, or they can advertise on their own website, or any mode of social media, they believe that this can be all the advertising that they need. You kind of miss out on who that newspaper still reaches.
Right.
Because you do have a group of readers that prefer to hold it in their hands. They still want that tangible, readable thing. They want to sit at their breakfast table and not read it on a tablet or on a laptop. They want to hold it and be able to flip the pages.
Yeah.
I'm one of those. I still prefer that way of reading. And your advertising is going to reach those people. But advertising has become more expensive too. And that's one of the hard things to combat is not everybody has that advertising budget. And when you look at the state of the world right now, that's dwindled even more. And newspapers for a long time have relied on that. And that's been a big factor in the decline. As well as, looking at subscriptions. Well, if I can get my news for free over here, why would I pay for it on your site?
It's almost like you have to break out of a mold to find a need and fill it. We have a lot of community organizations. We have business association, the Calaveras Area Business Association, and same thing with Arnold, and Chamber of Commerce, and each of them have a membership. And I wonder, using the skills of the newspaper, writing articles of particular interest to a particular organization. I wonder if some sort of arrangement could be made, along with advertising of businesses that want to reach that particular ordinance or that area, and know that they're going to be read because it's a special little thing that's going, like a newsletter. In other words, and then that newsletter perhaps can be part of a weekly publication as well. Word from copper, word from here, word from there. And so that would reach more people. Maybe something like that would be, could work.
It could. And that has been done in the past. And typically it's people who are writing columns from their perspective in their communities and what they're seeing. And we invite that sort of thing, actually. I've had a lot of comments during my time as a journalist, but especially as an editor. You hear what the community is thinking and how they're feeling, and you want to be open to that and responsive to it. And I've had a lot of comments that we have a very liberal paper. Now I'll hear that we have a very liberal paper from people who are more conservative, but I'll hear that we have a very conservative paper from people who are more liberal. Our opinion page does have more liberal voices.
You mean the Hate Trump page?
The Hate Trump page. And I'm actually going to write a column that speaks to this, but we do have those columnists that are opposed to the current administration. And I have people that say, we want to hear our point of view, to which I say, then let me have your point of view. If you would like to write a column with your conservative voice, or somebody that is a good writer and can speak to that and make those points, please have them contact us, because we want everybody to come away with a different viewpoint. We want everybody to come in open and say, okay, this is what this person says, this is what this person says. I don't necessarily agree with all this or with all this, but I'll be open to, something that everybody will feel satisfied in what they read and feel like they've been heard.
Right.
And that's our policy, is to be open to those voices.
It's a little like Dale Carnegie.
Yep.
The thing that that is important to our group and myself is just honesty in reporting. No one's harmed by somebody giving an opinion you disagree with.
Yeah.
Now, there is some things that words can have negative effects. There's such thing as slander and malice, which can destroy a person or their business. Yeah. And so that would be the exception to. So freedom of speech is kind of like freedom of responsible speech. In other words, you don't harm anybody. And so there's a lawsuit going on. I understand CNN has an out of court agreement, and has to do with young people and at a festival. And the media, in this case it was liberal media, was there to try to make these people who were wearing GABA hats to be racist and evil. And they did it by using certain videos but not others. And they try to make the kids to be aggressors. Yeah. They didn't realize they're going to get sued, and they did. Yeah. And there's two major news organizations that settled out of court, and there's 6 more to go. And my thinking is the solution may already be in progress. Yeah. Because every, especially at the national level, I think every reporter and every editor is going to be sensitive now about balance. Yeah. Because so it looks like you don't need more regulation.
No, and I think that's something that has to be, that every news organization has to be conscious of.
Yeah.
On our side of it, we have to do our due diligence. We have to make sure that we have all of the facts in order. And we have to be able to approach all parties concerned and get as much reporting done as we can before putting anything out there.
And it's balanced.
And it has to be balanced. And that's not necessarily a political thing, it's just a responsible thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's making sure that the entirety of the story is out there. Sometimes that's going to take several weeks, sometimes it's going to take months. Sometimes there's just no way that you can put a story together because you can't get all of the information.
Right.
It's a very tricky balance. One of the things that I would say, as far as the reader's side of it is concerned, and not just reader but viewer.
Right.
If you're watching the news,
right,
ask the questions, ask the context.
Right.
The larger broadcasters are all going to be guilty of it. If you're watching a morning news program,
right,
think about this. Are they reporting news stories, or do they have a bunch of talking heads on? Are all these pundits, what is their background? What organization are they with?
Right.
You know, so if you have somebody who's out there and they're on a program where they're going gung-ho about the Second Amendment rights and, you know, pro-gun and all of that, what's their background? Are they connected to the NRA? Think about those things.
Right.
If it's somebody who is, you know, with in opposition to the current administration, what is their background? But always go into these things with a, I don't want to say cynical, but with a discerning mind.
Skeptical.
Have some skepticism and know that those programs, whether it's, you know, one of the morning programs on CNN or Fox or one of those national programs, think about who they're talking to.
Right.
Because those are folks with an opinion, or they might be beholden to a corporation or some sort of entity, and they want to try and get that message across. There's going to be propaganda everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's up to us as consumers to be aware of what's being fed to us.
Right.
And not to go into it just with, this makes me feel better, so I'm going to assume it's right.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we need to look at the ingredients on that package and make sure that what we're eating is not going to kill us.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
He doesn't agree with me. He must be evil.
Yeah, exactly. That's not necessarily the case.
You're
So,
right.
but I think on a local level, when you're watching, say, KCERA or KXTV or one of the local news stations, you're a little bit safer, even though some of those are owned by larger corporate or national news agencies or just corporations. They tend to be more balanced, and they are telling local stories. And then it boils down to your local newspaper. Those are more than likely going to be privately owned, family owned, and they're going to be even more committed to the community that they're in to make sure that those voices
Yeah.
get heard.
Also, there's more communication with their subscribers
Yeah.
and advertisers.
Yeah.
There's a recent item that came to my attention. This is the Black Lives Matter movement,
Mm-hmm.
BLM movement. And this is one of the few ideological movements that was openly discussed by the founders. The founders of the movement, there are 3 of them, all of them are Marxists. The movement was created to advance a Marxist purpose, which is the changing of the United States to a socialist state with the use of crisis or violence. And what was amazing to me, this was actually on the news, maybe not the national news, but it was reported. And there's no doubt that this was true, that the movement was controlled, founded, and organized by the Marxists. But a large number of people that were following the movement were not. They were interested in injustice to Negro people by police. And they had the impression that this was widespread, even though it was like 1.5 million incidences that between law enforcement and violent situations. It's very seldom that you have a case of racism by police, by either way, black and white. They're pretty well trained. Somebody said that if you were to gather a group of people based on their honesty and courage, you couldn't go further than your law enforcement. And the next one would be nurses.
Well, I've worked in the hospital system, so I definitely agree with nurses and anybody in the medical community. Those folks are the real heroes.
Yeah.
When it comes to that stuff, again, we have to look at where's that information coming from, who's reporting it. If we get involved in an organization, just like consuming the news, find out all that you can about something before you commit to it.
Right.
Make sure that it's something that you want to put your beliefs and your support behind.
You have to almost be a detective. But when major media picked up on the principles of the BLM, almost universally, exception of Fox. And so a lot of Fox was also on board with it. Even Dr. Oz, for heaven's sake, looking for cases of discrimination, racial discrimination in the hospitals. Anyway,
and I think that kind of stuff comes down to, again, you can't throw a blanket over the nation and say it's all like this.
right.
I think it's something that you have to look at community by community, organization by organization. And it all just comes down to who are the folks that are reporting these things. And you know, it's just like when it comes to science, or when it comes to religion, or when it comes to any sort of system of study, never go into it gung-ho and just accept everything as it is.
Right. You got to be, well, science is skepticism.
It is.
It has to be.
And it has to be. And that's why, you know, I read somewhere today that where science is, a scientist, when they do the work, they won't proof their own work. You know,
yeah, they're peer reviewed.
Peer reviewed. You know, you have to have somebody else come in that is unobjective and look at it. And I think that comes back to the role of newspapers. You know, there's an accountability that that newspapers have for their communities. It's
right.
There was something I read not too long ago. I wish I could cite exactly what it was. There was a community that lost their newspaper.
Oh.
And that's happening more and more. There are more and more news deserts, and part of that is acquisition by private equity firms. They buy them out, make them fail, earn their money that way.
By making them fail?
Yeah, and there's a few places where you can look for that. That's a rabbit hole where you can learn all about that. So even beyond the internet, you've got larger interests that are concerned that will buy up small newspapers and make them fail just for their own
That's horrible.
pocketbook. Yeah,
That's
unfortunately. But this one community had
that
lost.
needs to be exposed.
Yeah.
And exposed by the newspapers.
So that's the thing. They lost their newspaper, and when that happened, all of a sudden there started to be political corruption in that community, in that city. And I wish I could remember where it was, but that was one of the roles of that newspaper, was to hold the local political leaders and government officials, keep their feet to the fire.
That's good.
You know, let them know that your citizenry is watching you, and you need to be held accountable for these things.
So in a nutshell, we need to really be skeptical in what we read and what we see on TV. And if we see something's not right, we should speak up.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same with newspapers too.
Yeah.
You know, we do our best to get the full story out there. If there's more that is to it, let us know. We'll do follow-ups. We'll do that additional reporting where we need to. And mistakes do happen. So,
Marc Lutz, this has been so fascinating. We just got warmed up,
I know.
But now it's the end of the show. Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. See you next time.